Very good morning, everybody, and welcome to our event this morning. I'm Andrew Clark, co-chair of the Marketing and Communications Committee at BritCham and partner here at AsiaWorks. We're a regional creative agency with offices in Singapore, Bangkok and Jakarta, and we make and move videos for brands, corporates, marketers and NGOs, providing production services, video content and live interactive video solutions. So our event today is a collaborative event between the Marketing and Communications Committee and the Startup, Entrepreneur and Small Business Committee. And actually it's been quite some time in the making. First of all, before we get into the main event itself, I'd like to give you a little background about our two committees. So the Marketing and Communication Committee exists to keep British Chamber members and the broader business community in Singapore updated with the latest research, trends and technology in the Marcom sector to promote industry best practice and showcase the individual capabilities of members via Chamber initiatives and through the development of our own events, seminars and shareable content. The Startup, Entrepreneur and Small Business Committee offers a diverse and representative network of business sectors and industries. It aims to serve as an idea exchange platform for like-minded entrepreneurs and business owners through establishing close links with the other active committees. So let's get on to our event for today. And the main purpose of our event today is really to give BritCham members and our wider community and all of you who have joined us today some practical, useful information and insight into the weird and wonderful world of social media marketing. So we're going to structure the event in 4 parts today. Part 1 will be about optimizing social pages, and this part of the presentation will focus on the setup and the optimization of LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram profiles with our panelist Elizabeth Taylor. Part 2, paid social. Anish Ananth, who's joining us today as well, will take us on a journey to help us discover the various ways in which you can target audiences on social media for any budget. And part 3, influencer marketing, where Hattie Trounce, who's joining us today, is going to present a kind of influencer 101 guide, if you like. And finally, in part 4, we'll take some of your questions for a little Q&A session. That's always dependent on time. And you can ask those questions at any time using the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of the Zoom window. Please just pop those questions in. You can ask them anonymously if you prefer not to be identified. But if you are asking them on behalf of yourself and we would like you to be identified, then please pop your name and where you're from in as well. So now it's time for me to introduce our speakers for today. And here they are. We have, first of all, I'd like to introduce Anish, who's the Regional Digital Strategy Lead at Two Stallions here in Singapore, a leading digital marketing agency. He's a digital marketing leader who truly believes in leveraging the power of data to create bespoke and tailored digital marketing strategies for existing new clients. Welcome, Anish. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for speaking today.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Next up, we've got Elizabeth Taylor, who's the senior trainer and owner of a company called Digital Direction. And Elizabeth provides digital marketing training workshops and one-on-one consultancy here in Singapore, where she supports small business owners and entrepreneurs to develop their businesses using social media, content and advertising. Thanks for joining us today, Elizabeth. Very much looking forward to your talk.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
And finally, we've got Hattie Trounce, who's the Senior Key Account Manager at Digital Business Lab. Digital Business Lab are a performance-driven and creative social media agency with offices in Hong Kong and Singapore. And Hattie is responsible for the agency's growth and development in Singapore and is the lead contact for social media strategies and executions such as influencer marketing, which she'll be talking to us about later on, as well as video production and social listening. Thanks for joining us today, Hattie.
Thanks, Andrew. Looking forward to it.
And so you've probably all had enough of me droning on, and now you've met everybody, and now you know what we're going to be talking about. So let's jump into it straight away with Elizabeth, who's going to tell us all about building profiles in social media. Take it away, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Andrew. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session. So I'm going to be taking you through the kind of simple first steps of how to optimize your social pages. And this is something we often overlook and forget, but actually it's really important in terms of our searchability online and our brand awareness. So if we go through to the next slide, I'll just do a brief introduction of who I am. That's okay. So so you heard my name, Liz Taylor, and I run a company here called Digital Direction, and we do kind of digital marketing training and coaching. I also run some government-funded training programs, doing a lot with the local restaurants at the moment to try and help them out with their digital marketing. My experience is about 12 years in entertainment marketing for Warner Brothers and Universal, which was quite amusing with a name like Elizabeth Taylor working in the film industry. I got lots of freebies at the time, which was great. And then I moved into teaching and tutoring, which is what I'm doing at the moment. So doing quite a bit of work for my own company and also for Click Academy in Asia. So the next slide then, we're looking at the agenda for today. And as Andrew said, I'm going to take you through a couple of tips on how to optimize your social pages, first of all for LinkedIn, and then also looking at Facebook and Instagram. So we'll jump straight in, starting off with LinkedIn. And I just wanted to reinforce why LinkedIn is such an important platform. So if we look at the next slide, there's a couple of important statistics on there. So 88% of your leads at the top of your conversion funnel usually come from LinkedIn. This is research done by LinkedIn, so that might be a slightly inflated number, but from my experience, lots and lots of leads, especially for B2B, do come from the LinkedIn platform. And actually, the leads are much more cost effective than, say, doing a pay-per-click campaign on Google AdWords. They tend to be up to a third cheaper. And they generate more conversions as well. So not only are you kind of driving that traffic at the top of the conversion funnel, but also it does actually convert at the end as well. And based on my experience working with small businesses here in Singapore, we find that LinkedIn drives around sort of 46 to 50% of your corporate traffic comes from LinkedIn. So it's a really, really important platform to get right. And I'm just going to pause at this moment because I often get asked whether it's important to focus on your LinkedIn business page or whether to focus on your personal profile. And the key thing here is to understand that people come to LinkedIn to connect with people, not necessarily businesses. So I'd very much encourage you to focus on your personal profile. It's important to have a business page because this is really good for search. So if people look for your company, often your business page will come up in that Google search engine results page. But actually, it's your personal profile that you should be using to build up those leads, to drive traffic to your corporate website. So if we go on to the next slide, I'm going to take you through how to optimize your personal profile to make sure that you're getting maximum visibility with your potential clients. So this might sound like a really simple tip, but have a good photo. It's amazing how many terrible photos there are out there on LinkedIn. Your face should be at least 60% of the image that you've got. Your eyes should be smiling at the camera. And also, if you can show yourself in action, that's even better. So for example, on my profile, I've got me doing a Q&A panel at an event. So it just kind of tells your story a little bit more. If we go on to the next slide, it's also really important that you have a good background image. So I'm talking about that rectangular image that sits behind your profile photo. And actually, LinkedIn have shown that you get up to 35 times more messages if you have a good background image. So your background image should showcase your talents. It should show what you're all about. What do you do? And ideally, this should be an extension of your company branding. So you need to make sure that you have a really impactful image there, that it stands out. And also one thing to bear in mind is your picture will sit in the bottom left-hand corner, so it will obscure part of the image. So make sure that it's okay, that you can still understand your core message with that bit being covered up by your personal picture. So if we move to the next slide, then I've got an example here from a LinkedIn trainer. So you can see here, she's got 3 images of her kind of in action doing what she does best, which is talking and training and being a keynote speaker. So it's really easy within a couple of seconds to see what this person does, what they're about, and really understand, if you're going to contact them, what sort of person they are too. So on the next slide then, looking at your headline. Now, this is one of the most important things you can do to improve your visibility within search on LinkedIn. So your headline on your LinkedIn profile defaults to your most recent job title. Now, you don't have to have that. You can write whatever you want there. So this is your kind of so what. Who are you and what are you about? And the most important thing about this section is to include keywords. So if I was looking for someone to help me out with my digital marketing, I might type in digital marketing agency. If, say, Hattie or Anish didn't have those words within that headline, then they wouldn't come up within my search. So think about your potential audience and how they're going to be looking for you on LinkedIn. And then you'll know then what words to put in the headline profile at the top. So I've got a couple of examples on the next slide. Here we go. So you can see here that you've got two examples where they're showing what they do and they're using a combination of keywords there within their headline. And I quite like it when people use the ticks or they use circles or lines to break up the keywords. And it's fine to have a list of keywords. It doesn't have to be a full sentence as long as you've got those words there so that people can find you. And then moving on to the next slide, this is an example of how you can optimize your keywords. So for example, if you were the Vice President of Sales at ABC Corporation, you could put in there VP Sales, revenue growth, which is a keyword in cloud-enabled technology solutions, product development, and sales operation leadership. So you're really cramming in those keywords. If you do have a premium account with LinkedIn, then you can check and see which keywords people are using to find you. For example, if I do that, I can see people are looking for marketing trainer, marketing coach, for example. So I know that I need to include those keywords within my headline profile. So moving on to the next slide. There we go. So I won't go into this in too much detail because your profile summary, which is that box underneath your image, basically just gives it some information about you and who you are. And my tips here would be to really think about three things. So you're giving a narrative of your past and your experience and your expertise, a glimpse of your future. So what are you focusing on now and in the next sort of 12 to 18 months? And what would it be like to work with you? That's kind of what people are looking for when they're reading your narrative. And I've listed some keywords that you can include in your profile summary for a kind of mid to senior level executive. Now, the keyword ranking here doesn't have such an impact as it does in your headline. So it's much more important to get the headline right, but obviously you want your profile summary to stand out as well. So moving on to the next part this is really important. So if there's two things I want you to take away from this LinkedIn section, one is your profile headline with the keywords, and the second are your skills. So often we get a bit bored at this point going through our LinkedIn profile. We've scrolled all the way down past all of our experience, all of our work experience and our volunteering, etc. The bit right at the bottom is your profile skills. And actually, LinkedIn have shown that you are 33 times more likely to be messaged. And I think it's 17 times more likely to be viewed if you have 5 or more endorsed skills. So it's up to you to add these skills in. So you just click on the little plus button in your profile and you put there the skills that you want to be recognized for within LinkedIn. And this works much in the same way that the keywords do for your profile headline. So if people are searching for somebody within sales or somebody within production, if you're endorsed for those skills, then you're more likely to come up. So the first tip is to make sure you've got 5 or more skills in there. And the second thing is you can actually reorder these skills. So for example, with me, with my career, I might have people that have endorsed me for I don't know, campaign planning or point of sale merchandising. I'm not doing that anymore, so I don't necessarily want to be found for those skills. So I can click on that little button that you can see on the screen at the moment with the red arrow, and I can move the skills that I don't want to be shown down. So the top 5 will show, and I can pin them, literally pin them to the top of my profile. So they're the ones I want to be recognized for. And then moving on to the next slide. Thank you. So I won't go through all of these, but hopefully you'll have this as a reference. Some more studies done by LinkedIn. This is towards the end of 2019. actually listed out the most sought after keywords in skills. So obviously not all of those are going to be relevant for you. I was very happy to see digital marketing in there, but these are the ones that people look for the most on LinkedIn. So if any of those are relevant for you, then I recommend that you use those within the skills section. So then if we look at the next slide, this shows you how you can get endorsed for your skills. It's not just about adding the skills there. You need to be endorsed by your first degree connections. And this contributes to your credibility, and this will improve the searchability of your profile under that specific keyword. So if we go on to the next slide, you can see how we'd go about this. So generally, just a very basic tip, if you endorse other people, they normally endorse you back, as long as you've got a good working relationship with them. So I often endorse people that I work with for their skills, and I find 9 times out of 10, they will then endorse me back. You can also message people within the LinkedIn platform and ask for specific endorsements. Or if we go to the next slide, you'll see that you can also manage your endorsements. So you need to make sure, as you can see in the section that I've circled there, that your endorsements are switched on so that you're you can be endorsed for skills, but also that you appear in the recommendations to be endorsed. That's really important. It does default to on. So if you've not changed it, it should still be on, but definitely check those settings within your endorsements. And then the last thing to consider for LinkedIn is recommendations. And I'm sure you're all very familiar with this, but I actually diarise this. I put it in my diary to remember to ask people for recommendations. This is really important, again, in terms of your searchability and your credibility. So in the top right-hand corner, there is the button to ask for recommendations. As we'll see on the next screen, I would really recommend that you put a personalized message in saying, I enjoyed working with you, Dan, on this last project. I'd really appreciate it if you endorse me for the following skills and mention, what it was like to work with me. And then often people will then, if you've got, again, a good positive working relationship with them, they will then endorse you. So it's really important that we do that on a regular basis. So the search algorithm within LinkedIn will rank recommendations that have been put in your profile more recently as higher than maybe some of those recommendations you've got from a couple of years ago. So it's important that you go in and update that as frequently as you can. Cool, so let's move on to Facebook. Oh, sorry, one more thing, forgot about that slide. So the last thing on LinkedIn is to publicize your profile. And this, so you may not know about this, but you can actually edit your custom URL. So if you can see there, sort of in the bottom right-hand corner, my previous URL was LinkedIn, Elizabeth Taylor, then a bunch of numbers. You can actually click on that and edit it. So mine is now DD for digital direction. And obviously, if you're sharing your LinkedIn profile on your email or on other social media, then it looks a lot more professional if you have your brand in there as opposed to just a general URL. So that's my last tip. Okay, so I'll move on then. Should be Facebook now. Yeah, there we go. So Facebook, very, very different beast to LinkedIn, but still important in terms of getting your brand visibility right. So on the next slide, we'll see why you should have a business page. And I've been quite surprised, actually. I'd say nearly half of the clients that I work with in Singapore are running their business marketing from their personal profile on Facebook. And I would strongly advise against that. There are lots of reasons to have a business page. The main ones for me are your ability to advertise within Ads Manager, which I'm sure Anish is going to talk about, and also your ability to analyze and have access to data on your audience. I mean, there's some fantastic data in there about when they're online, what they're interested in, which posts they look at, which ones are most popular. You're not going to get any of that if you don't have a business page. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to update everyone today that Facebook announced, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that they're looking at revamping Facebook business pages to make them easier for us as business owners and also easier for customers to use. So they're going to take away the like button and just have follow so that you know people who are following you are really engaged with your content. And they're also going to give us some more analytics. So the one that I really like is the crossover between Facebook and Instagram so that you can see which of your audience are on both platforms. So that's really handy to see in terms of your content marketing. So it's going to be much, much easier to use Facebook business pages, which I think is good news for everybody. So if we look at the next slide then, so a couple of tips on optimizing your Facebook business page to make sure it's as good as it possibly can be. And starting off again with the basics, you need to have a good profile image. It will appear in a circle at the moment on a white screen. I know they are trialing black as well. And I personally have a real problem when people cram in too much detail here. So about 95% of Singaporeans will look at Facebook on a mobile phone. So you need to be able to see your logo and any text in a tiny, tiny little circle. So always test it out on your mobile if you can. Then if we move on to the next slide, we can see that your cover image, just as we did with LinkedIn, this is really important. And sort of Facebook is really pushing the video format at the moment within its content marketing, and it's rewarding businesses that use video, as I've seen myself in my own marketing and that of my clients. Now, on your cover image, you can have a video here. The recommendation is to have it, well, I like it when it's about 30 to 60 seconds long, but you can go up to 90 seconds. And this is your opportunity to showcase your brand. If I'm sort of looking through Facebook and I'm looking for a company to interact with, and I go onto their Facebook page and I see a really nice clear video that makes sense within 30 seconds, I'm much more likely to follow that brand and interact with them in the future. An alternative to a video is to do a slideshow, which is a sequential set of images that will play one after another. So if you don't fancy doing a video, then that's another option for you to do a slideshow there. And I'd recommend changing this. So have it, see how it works for a couple of months. If you've got an offer on, or if you're launching a new product, then change your cover image on Facebook to reflect that. Then on to the next slide. Ooh. Thank you. And then this section is your about section. And this actually, on the new page design that they just announced that they're testing, this is going to become a lot more prominent. This is kind of your bio bit on Facebook. And again, most of the clients that I work with have, I don't know, 1 or 2 sentences in this section. And this is your opportunity for 2 things. One is to tell your brand story. And the second, again, for search. So make sure you've got your keywords in this section so people can find your business as easy as possible. So try and be descriptive. 2 or 3 paragraphs here is great. Often I see this as an underutilized area of Facebook. So then moving on to the next one. Another really important part of a Facebook business page, which you don't get on your personal profile, is the ability to add a call to action button. I think this currently still defaults to send a message, which is absolutely fine, but you can have shop now, make a booking, or contact. A whole nother topic that I could talk about for ages is Facebook introducing shops, as Instagram is as well. And that's going to become a really good functionality for businesses that want to sell directly through Facebook. So that's going to change the layout of the Facebook page. But we're focusing on optimizing your profiles today. And my top tip for that would be on your mobile version of your page, you can add WhatsApp. And actually, WhatsApp and Messenger rank in the top 5 of sites that Singaporeans look at. And they're really kind of going to beat social media to the post very, very soon. So people are spending more time messaging than they are on social media. So if you can have your call to action to be messaging, then that's great. Okay, moving on to the next one. On that vein, hopefully you've got this set up already, but having automated responses set up as a kind of holding message to get back to customers who have questions. So for example, mine says, thank you, I'm training at the moment, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And you set this up within the messaging functionality that you can see on the screen at the moment. So you set up an instant reply, and that just means that your customer knows you're going to get back to them. And then on the next slide, we can see another way to use messaging to interact with your customers. And this is to set up a frequently asked questions section. So if you find you're getting asked the same 3 or 4 questions over and over by your customers, then you can automate your responses to this. So you can see in this example from my friend's website, Ignite Heal, she has listed there 4 frequently asked questions. And if you click on them, you will get an automated response that she's put in there. So you're trying to improve that customer experience when they're trying to get information from you on your Facebook page. And if we move on to the next slide, the last thing for Facebook is to pin a post. So what this is this is literally pinning a post to the top of your business page, so that that's the first thing that anybody that sees your page for the first time will view. So this is for new customers coming to your Facebook business page. I've got one on there that basically just explains, what I do. So it's a little image. I probably should update it to a video explaining my services, and I've pinned it to the top of my page. Now you can update that just as I recommended with your cover image. So if you've got a special offer, or if you're introducing a new product, or if you've got a new collaboration, then you can have that as your pinned post. So that's my last tip on Facebook. And then we'll move on to Instagram. We're getting there. So it's very challenging to get this all into 10, 15 minutes, but we're doing okay. So Instagram, on the next slide, you'll see exactly the same as Facebook. I would very much recommend that you have a business profile if you're marketing goods and services on Instagram. So just the same as Facebook, gives you access to analytics and also allows you to do advertising. And very exciting is that Instagram recently announced that they're going to have a new Shops tab. So this always gets tested in the States first before it comes over here. But alongside kind of IGTV and the other tabs that you have within your Instagram business profile, soon you'll have the ability to have a Shops tab, which is fantastic. And also I've heard that there's going to be more clickable links too, which would be music to everyone's ears, I think. So if we go through to the next slide, really important to have an eye-catching picture here. Just as we did with Facebook, it needs to stand out on a white background in a small white circle. Now, Instagram is viewed primarily on mobile, so 99.5, I think was the last data I saw, 99.5% of people here will look at Instagram on a mobile device. So you need to have it clear on a mobile. Now, my tip here is to run an edge around your image. So, for example, I've got a picture of myself because I'm kind of selling my personal services, and I've just put a line around the outside so that it pops out of the white background. Then if we move on to the next slide and have a look at your name field. So your company name or your handle is the one that appears at the top. So in the example on your screen at the moment, we've got Edit Styling, so that's the name of the business. But your company name, when you fill in your profile, can be something else. So it doesn't have to be Edit Styling again. So my friend here has said it's Nina, personal stylist. And just like we did with LinkedIn, looking at your personal headline, this is where you need to optimize for search. You need to use your keywords here. So for example, I've got the name of my business within the handle, so digital direction, and then I've got digital marketing trainer and coach, I think I've got there, as the name in that field. So you can have something different. Okay, and then the next slide. Also really important that your bio looks fantastic. Now, a top tip here is the first thing your bio should do on your Instagram business profile is clarify who you are for. So people will often find you if you're doing good content marketing on Instagram through hashtags or your content, and they'll come and check you out on your profile. So my top tip is within your first sentence, say, who is your business for? So I say, I'm here for entrepreneurs and small business owners. So you think, okay, yeah, that's me, and you carry on reading. So really clearly state what you offer. I think it looks really good if you use emojis or bullet points to list out your products and services. Some people use hashtags so that you can engage with a community, but you've got very limited space here. So if you can't squeeze a hashtag in there, that's fine. It's more important you explain what you're offering. And then if we move on to the next slide to talk about linking in here as well. So 2 things you can do in your bio on top of this. You can have your contact information. So it shows on here how you edit this, and you can do book, get tickets, reserve, start an order. F&B, they've just recently added in here that you can order food as well, which is great, or you can buy a gift voucher. And then on the next slide, we can see about having your clickable link. Now, at the moment, and this is the big drawback of Instagram, you can have one clickable link and that sits in your bio. So in order to optimize this, you can do 2 things. The first is to use a tool like Rebrandly. Now, Rebrandly means that you can make that clickable link look as commercial and professional as possible. So mine might be, digital direction coaching. Or you can use a service called Linktree, And what this does is you click on the link and it opens that box, like you can see the purple box on the screen, and you can have, I think it's up to a maximum of 6 to 7 links to other places. So for example, if you offer a multiple range of products and services, you can have more than one link there. So I might set that up and say, okay, book my workshops here, read my blog here, look at my customer reviews here. So you can link to various different places if you use Linktree. Now, that update that I mentioned before, where they're going to add in a shops tab, which hasn't happened yet, but is on the way, apparently you will be able to put clickable links in there. That's what I've read, but I've not seen it yet. So we move on to the next slide. The last thing for me to say about Instagram is, first of all, just to highlight the importance of stories. You may have seen in the press that Instagram are really pushing this. So in the States, when you go into the newsfeed on Instagram, you actually have a whole page of bubbles of stories rather than any kind of normal feed like we see here in Singapore. So they're testing out, really pushing these stories. So that's another point for content marketing. But in terms of your profile, you should be setting up story highlights. So on the example here from later, you can see in that sort of blue, yellow, pink circles at the bottom, these are your stories highlights. So you pick the best stories, you categorize them. So for example, you've got here scheduling, planning, growing, etc. And you pick your best stories and you save them there, because if you don't save them, then your stories will disappear after 24 hours. And the research from Instagram is at the moment showing that people are going onto Instagram, they're looking at, say, 3 or 4 stories and 1 post in the newsfeed, and then they're leaving. So it's almost more important that you've got stories than you have content in your newsfeed, so that people can understand, again, your products and services, and you can increase your brand awareness. So that's everything from me. Obviously, I'll be here at the end to answer questions, but thank you very much for your time. I've got my contact details on there, and you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram under Digital Direction.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. That was great. I was quickly taking my headphones off and putting my notepad down just then because I was furiously taking notes all the way through that. I've got clickable links on Instagram on the way, which would be great, and headline optimization for search. I'm looking forward to a little bit more of a chat later on about all of that. Thank you so much. That was a huge download of information. So I've seen a lot of... Absolutely. We are we're kind of constricted for time, but it's great, really good. Thank you very much. And I think that there's a lot of really informative and useful stuff in that presentation. People have been asking, can we get decks? Can we get video afterwards? We are going to be putting the video of this event online on demand after the event, so you'll be able to watch it again. Okay, so who's next? We have Anish. How are you, Anish?
Hello, all good, all good.
Are you ready?
Yep, ready.
Okay, so Anish, you're going to tell us all about the weird and mysterious world of paid advertising.
Yep, that's right.
Fantastic.
So actually there's a lot to cover in the given time, but I'm going to try my best to cover everything I can.
We are very much looking forward to it. Thank you very much indeed. Away you go. Off you go.
All right. Thank you for having me, guys. So just to jump into it straight away, introduction to paid social advertising. So I'll talk about many different components. Some of them will overlap with what Elizabeth has said as well. And yeah, happy to start this. So as a bit of an introduction to myself, so I'm currently the digital strategy lead at Two Stallions, which is a local data-driven performance marketing agency. And I've got about 5 years of experience in digital marketing. I've worked in multiple kinds of markets. So back in the UK and in India with iProspect, which is part of the Dentsu Aegis network, as well as in Singapore with different agencies, which is based off creative as well as performance marketing agencies. I've also recently conducted the Google Squared graduate program. So it's a leadership program provided by Google, as well as a course provider called Avado, if you've heard of them. So that's something I've recently done as well. So I'd just like to jump into the next slide, right? And essentially there's two types of paid social that we have. So the first one is boosted posts. And with boosted posts, you can essentially do these straight from your Facebook page. And as Elizabeth highlighted towards the end of her presentation, you do need to have a business page to do this on as well. So then you can boost it. You can boost posts from your personal page too, but again, I would be highly recommended that you create a business page to do so. And with boosted posts, it's actually very, very simple. You just have these three simple steps, which is you choose your audiences, you choose your max budget that you want to spend, and then you decide how long you want to run your campaign for. And you can often optimize with boosted posts for things like page likes, comments, shares, and overall brand awareness. So something a few marketers like to call vanity metrics. I personally wouldn't want to optimize just for these vanity metrics. I would like to go beyond that. And that's why you have Business Manager, which is the next slide. So on Business Manager, on LinkedIn, it's called Campaign Manager. So you can essentially choose different kinds of ad placements, and you can choose ad placements both within Facebook, Instagram, and as well as moving beyond Instagram with something called the Facebook Audience Network. And on LinkedIn, it's called the LinkedIn Audience Network. And what this does is that LinkedIn and Facebook have partnerships with various different websites. And what you can do is you can use the various targeting methods that these advertising suites offer you, and you can run display ads on these websites that they have a partnership with which are quite useful. You have way more ad objectives, and I'll take you through this in my next couple of slides. You can also maintain creative controls, so you have various types of formats that you can leverage, and each format sort of goes with the different ad objectives. So you have things like carousels, you have things like video ads, link ads, and again, these are something I can take you through a bit later on in the presentation. And then finally, we have advanced targeting, because you want to be able to target your most likely audience who are going to convert. And unfortunately, with boosted posts, while you can run some targeting, it's not as advanced, and you can't sort of break it down into key components, which you can on the Business Manager. So if we go onto the next slide, which is what I spoke about just before this, which is objectives and formats, right? So the first one is the funneled approach. So the reason I've done it in this way is because this is how you're going to see it when you initially go onto the ads manager to run your Facebook ads, right? And here you can, I've broken it down as for metrics with the sort of the larger objectives that you have, which is awareness, consideration, as well as conversion. And essentially you can, for awareness, you have metrics like brand awareness, reach, traffic, for consideration, and various different things. And I've also highlighted things like, for awareness, it's more of an always on campaign, driving awareness. Consideration is more tactical campaigns, because you have to focus really on the different kinds of audiences you want to target based on this. And conversion is obviously pushing for sales, pushing for leads on the landing page, platform lead generation, all of these kind of things. So moving onto the next slide, right? So I've highlighted a few key sort of formats. Facebook offers many different formats that you can use. So I've sort of highlighted the ones that I think are most likely to help across the different objectives. So the first one would be video ads, and this would be essentially to increase your engagement. And you can target these again across Facebook, Audience Network, all of these things. And then if we move on to the next one, which is link ads. So with link ads, you can actually customize the call to action, and it can also be used in both static format as well as video formats. And you can drive targeted traffic to particular pages on your website that you want people to go to. And you can use the Facebook targeting method to do that, and I'll be taking you through that slightly later on in the presentation as well. And then the next one is lead generation ads. So these are actually quite interesting, and what you can do with these ones is you can also have video as well as static with these as well. And what it does is that it captures information that the end user has already provided to Facebook. So in this example, you see the name and the email address. You can edit it as the person running the ad. So you can add things like phone numbers and things like that based on the marketing sort of information that you're allowed to collect with all the data collection policies now. And then it's submitted to Facebook, and you can then retrieve this information. And the cool thing is you can add these email addresses to your marketing funnel. You can then retarget these users with ads that you want to run later on in the future, for example, for any other campaigns that you have. And then finally, we have carousels, right? And personally, for me, these are actually one of my favorite types of ad formats, because you can essentially tell an entire story by just one sort of format, right? Because you have these various different cards, which can also be static or videos, and each card can land the user to a different part of your website. So if you're selling a bunch of different products, or different services, and you have different pages with information on each, you can land people to the various different parts of your website. And then the last card would be landing people to your main sort of website and driving it that way. And yeah, personally, I do really like this format, and it's something that's worked a lot for some of the clients that we've done campaigns for. So moving on to defining target audiences. So I've basically structured this in this way, right? So you have 3 audiences, which is core audiences, which are audiences that you can build straight from the Facebook ad targeting options that you have, and I've got an example of that later on. You have custom audiences. So with custom audiences, what you can do is, if you have a database of audiences who have already purchased from you or inquired from you or taken a key action from you, and you have these on your customer database, if you just export this into a CSV file and upload it back onto Facebook, what you're able to do is you're able to tap onto the next kind of audience, which is a lookalike audience. So essentially what a lookalike audience is that it's an audience that behaves exactly like how your past customers who have converted behave on digital and social. So this takes into account how they kind of pages they like, the kind of websites that they surf when it comes into Facebook Audience Network, and all of this kind of stuff. So moving on to the next slide, we have the sort of the samples, right? So this is the core audience sample. So here what you'll see is you can target based on age, you can target based on gender, interest, behavior, education level, and you'll also have the indication of reach. So I think this is quite important. In Facebook, at times, you can run out of people to target. That has happened to us in the past, because in Singapore, we're quite small. So if you're running regional campaigns, and for that reason, I've selected Singapore as well as Malaysia in this case. And then I've added in a screenshot of the lookalike audience sample, right? So essentially what you do here is you choose the source. So the source could be a core audience, or it could be something called the Facebook pixel, which I'll be taking you through a bit later on as well. And you can then match the percentage. So if you look at the bar right at the bottom of the screen, it's set to 0.5%. And that's something that I would normally recommend that you do in terms of the range, because if you go too high, then the whole point of the lookalike audience sort of disappears, and you want to be as concise as possible, right? So jumping onto tracking your ads and campaigns as well as measurement. So Facebook ads reporting. So with Facebook ads reporting, you have 3 types of reports that you can get, which is an overview, the campaign, and the individual tracking. So if we go to the next slide, which is overview, what you can see in the overview is essentially real-time insights. You can also select the days in terms of the campaigns you want to run. So I would normally recommend that you only select 7 days if you're looking to track a campaign that you're currently running, because if you track a longer period of time, then it can get a bit confusing, because Facebook can just throw a lot of number at you, and then you'll have a lot of data in front of you, and you won't sort of know what to do with that data. And then you see the three tabs on top of the screenshot, which is overview, campaigns, and ad sets. So going on to the next slide, which is campaigns. Now with campaigns, this essentially has all of your campaigns that you're running. And honestly, it does get very overwhelming with the amount of numbers that you see on the screen at times, especially when you're trying to make quick changes to your campaign. And you can see metrics, things like cost per click, cost per conversion, and impressions, and much more as well, things like money spent, all of these kind of factors. So what I would recommend is if you go on to the next slide, right, is individual campaign tracking. So if you look at the circled box on the left-hand side, you can actually tick these boxes and just view the key campaigns that you wanna see the data for, and then do it in that way, and you'll be able to see the real-time insights for that, which can be quite interesting. Now, something that I don't see enough of is the Facebook Pixel. So going on to the next slide, we have this thing called the Facebook Pixel, and on LinkedIn, it's called the Insights tag. So essentially, Facebook and LinkedIn have the same sort of advertising suite, and LinkedIn's advertising suite has got a lot better over the last, I'd say, 18 months. There were a few issues with it previously. It used to be quite expensive to advertise on, but I think, as Elizabeth also mentioned earlier, it's got cheaper and it's a lot easier now. So what the Pixel will essentially help you do is that it's an analytics tool that allows you to measure the effectiveness of your advertising, right? So you can track things like specific events that you have on various different pages of your website. So let's say you have a lead generation form or a sign-up form. You can set the Pixel to say sign-up form. If you're selling lots of products on your page, then you can have things like they browse a specific page on your website. You can also add things like add it to wish list and these kind of things, and create these custom events. So I've actually got an example of these on the next slide. So when you log on to the ads manager, or when you're setting up the Pixel, you have these sort of events that you call it. And the ones with the stars are the ones that Facebook offers you as a default or a custom event. And the ones that you have in the middle, which is exit cart without purchase and browse a specific page, are the ones that I have created as a custom event, just to show you guys that you can do that. But one thing is that you need to be careful of is that sometimes brands tend to overcomplicate it and add too many pixels when they try to track too much information. So the key is to track relevant data. And actually, if you have too many pixels on your website, it can at times slow down your website. So the key is really to have the pixels in the right place. Unfortunately, I'm not able to take you through the entire process of how to set up the Pixel, but I'm happy to connect with anyone who wants more information on this after the webinar, and I'm happy to take you through that process as well. So moving on to the next slide, which is leveraging the best of both paid as well as organic social. So the key insight would be that you should always use data, right? I really do believe in using data and insights to create more compelling content that is visible to your audiences and that people are actually interested in. So if you go onto the next slide, right? So as Elizabeth mentioned earlier on as well, you have, once you create a business page, you can leverage a lot of insights. So you have things called page insights. And again, what happens with these kind of insight tools is that you can sometimes get lost in the data. So it's actually very important to keep track of the right kind of data. And for me, the kind of data that I would sort of look at is things like reach and engagement, the kind of actions people take on the pages. So why are people clicking on certain things? What are the kind of actions that they're taking? Who are your audiences, right? Are these people, what age gender are they? When are they logging onto Facebook? What device are they on? These kind of things. How many people are viewing your page? Why are they viewing it? And the sections of your page they're looking at, as well as posts. So this is something that's fairly obvious, but I still don't see enough of it when we're looking and when we're working with certain brands, is that how have your previous posts performed, and how can you leverage those insights to then create more compelling content for future posts. So this is what the Facebook one looks like. If you go on to the next slide, which is the Instagram one. So to get these insights, because Instagram is a mobile first platform, you'll essentially have to go onto your business page and you'll see a little graph on the top of your page, and you'll be able to leverage these insights. These are your basic insights, which I took you through, that you can leverage on Facebook as well as Instagram. But I think what I've seen lately and what I do recommend is using stories more often than newsfeed ads, because then your newsfeed becomes something of a platform where you only post very important information or relevant content, and your stories can become a place where you can post most of your content, most engaging content, because you can actually do a lot of interesting things with the stories. And you're actually able to view things like impressions, you're able to view reach of your stories, you're also able to view the exit rate of your stories. So for example, if someone's exited at the first point, because when you do post a story, you have those various different dashes at the top of your story, those gray dashes, and you're able to view at the point where people exited their stories. So if you go on to the next slide now. So this is, my apologies, it's actually 4 steps. That's a typo from my side, but the way that I would use both worlds to create compelling content is audience segmentation. So you leverage your custom audiences, you leverage your core audience, lookalike audiences, make sure you're using these right. It's always okay to create more than one core audience because you don't have to have just one core audience and run those ads repeatedly on the same audience. You can break them up and you can actually label them within Facebook as well. Always collect relevant data, not all data, because you can get very, very lost in data and you can get caught away with things like, oh, my post got X amount of impressions, X amount of reach. But it's also very important to focus on the business results of it and focus on more and move beyond just the vanity metrics, because those aren't going to generate sales for your business. Those aren't going to do much apart from brand awareness and things like that. Always A/B test. It's okay to run an ad where you basically have the same audience, but you leverage different formats. So you might have one which is a video ad, you might have one that is a carousel, or if you want to do a side-by-side comparison of traffic, you can run one link ad and one carousel ad because they both achieve the same sort of objective, and you can see which one's working better for you, and then pause the one that isn't working and start promoting the one that's working more and more for you. And then the last one, which is adapt and use, right? So make sure that you're adapting the content all the time. Make sure that you're looking at your insights, maybe depending on how often you run ads, maybe look at your posts, I'd say every 1.5, every like 1.5 weeks, you view your insights and see how you're going, and see how you can optimize those and leverage and use the data that you've collected and then increase your content and make your content more relatable. So going on to the next slide, which is success stories of paid social, right? So I've picked 2 case studies with 2 very different objectives. The first one is actually a company called the Levi Motor Company, and these guys are a UK-based car dealership. So what they wanted to do was they wanted to drive targeted traffic and they wanted to increase their brand reach. So how they did this was, if you go into the next slide, the campaign execution was done by creating custom audiences from the website visitors and people who had recently submitted an inquiry. So that's what I said earlier. When you're looking at the pixel, you can collect these kind of relevant data and then create custom audiences based on this, which will then increase your awareness and conversion. They also reach out to people who've engaged with the Facebook page. And again, they got these insights from things like the Facebook page insight tool, from the ads reporting tool, these kind of things. And they also leveraged multiple creative formats based on the ad objective. So they A/B tested a lot of their creatives and saw which ones are working best. The one that you see on the right-hand side is just one of the many creatives that they ran. So the campaign results, right? So if you look at the next slide, I would just like to focus on for this case study, I'd like to focus on the last 2, which is that they got 203 sales inquiries generated by just that campaign, and they got 2% more sales compared to the same period from the previous year. Like I said earlier, it's great to have high reach. It's great to increase your website visitors, but it's also important to focus on your business results. So moving on to the next case study. So this is more of a campaign that's done to increase brand awareness and also to interestingly test the effect of other campaigns while running these brand awareness campaigns on social. So interestingly enough, these guys are an Australian insurance aggregator, so you can compare various kinds of insurance. And they had already run conversion ads on Facebook previously, but they wanted to see how brand awareness ads work for them. So if you go on to the next slide, you'll be able to see how they did that. So they created custom audiences again, based on interest. They leveraged multiple creative formats, again, based on the kind of ad objectives that they had. And in this case, they also used the placements of their ads. So they used something called the Facebook Audience Network, which I took you through right at the start of the presentation, which is essentially a bunch of sites that Facebook partners up with, and you're able to leverage the Facebook targeting options to use these display network ads. And then they also use data and insights to create relevant paid content. So this is actually a lead ad. Unfortunately, the video is not playing, but you're able to, essentially what the creative was that it was a video ad, and it sort of swiped up on its own, and you were able to fill in your relevant information. And these are the sort of campaign results that they had from it. So because this was a brand awareness, more of a brand awareness sort of campaign, they had 30% direct website visits. And interestingly enough, it affected their digital marketing overall, right? So they got a 16% lift in the organic search, which is SEO, and they got a 14% lift in their paid search while running these Facebook ads. Yeah, that's it from me. So if you guys have any questions on anything, please do feel free to reach out to me on my email or via LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer those in the coming days.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Anish. That was super insightful, like really getting under the hood of how you can tweak all of your campaigns in Facebook. That was really, really fascinating. And I'm sure that people will want to catch up and perhaps reach out to you directly to find out more information about all of that stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Right then, everyone. So Hattie, why don't you take it away on the wonderful world of influencer marketing? Thank you.
I will do. Thank you very much, Andrew. And hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Apologies for the sound. Hopefully it's all good now. But just to introduce myself, I know Andrew's done a great introduction already, but I've been working now in the digital marketing space for about 7 years. And for the last 4, I've specialized in social media marketing. So you can see from the slide that I've worked with a whole array of different clients and industries, both across project management and account management roles. I'm now working at Digital Business Lab, who is a creative and performance-driven social media agency here in Singapore, but also Hong Kong. And here I'm responsible for the agency's growth and development in Singapore, but also the lead contact for all things social media related, so social media strategies, but as well as all the executions and everything that Anish and Elizabeth have just taken you through. So things like video production, paid advertising, organic management, but also influencer marketing, which we're about to touch on, and social media listening. So going on to the next slide. So what I'm going to take you through today is, first of all, what is influencer marketing? So on the next slide, you will see there are 3 core points. The first thing is it is a user on social media. The traditional platforms you'll probably think about when you think of influencer is probably Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, so more of the Western channels. But this is also on Chinese social media, so things like WeChat, Weibo, Little Red Book, as well as Japanese, Korean, KakaoTalk and Line, but also LinkedIn. So there are also B2B influencers. The second point is it's someone who's established credibility in a specific industry. And I really mean someone with an asterisk. It could be absolutely anyone and anything. It could be a dog, a cat, a hedgehog, a virtual person, a baby, even the world record-breaking egg, which is the image I have at the bottom, who is the most liked picture on Instagram with over 55 million likes. And point 3 is the main point as to why companies and brands partner with influencers, is because it's the power to affect a purchasing decision. And this could be down to just their knowledge within a particular industry, their position, or it could just be the relationship that they have with his or her audience over time. And I think something else to point out here is an influencer, or a KOL, which is a key opinion leader, is what we as brands and companies call influencers. But influencers and also the platforms themselves, such as Facebook, would call them content creators, because for them, they are creating content for different platforms. If we move on to the next slide. Here, I've split categories of influence into 4 different sections. At the top, it's all about those with a larger reach and more control and output. It tends to have more control and output because this is linked to potentially them being paid. I'll touch upon later different ways to negotiate with influencers, but on the whole, this is why you'd have more control in the output. And these category of influence have the benefit of the broader appeal, but also the larger reach. When we look down the bottom at more micro-influencers and KOCs, these influencers have more influence and credibility. And this is because you tend to see as following goes up, engagement rate comes down. And that's just because the audience becomes more broad and slightly more blurry and less defined as we move towards the macro and celebrity influencers, and therefore they can be slightly less engaged. So when looking at the bottom two here, we can see they have more influence due to this more defined audience, but also powerful impact on purchasing decisions. And I think to add at the bottom here, I've got one called KOC, Key Opinion Consumer. Usually on this hierarchy, you'd probably see something called Nano, which are influencers with followers of less than 5,000. But I wanted to today talk about a key opinion consumer. So this is a new type of influencer in China who essentially focus their expertise on testing and reviewing products. And this is something and a phenomenon that we're seeing come across to Southeast Asia and Singapore. So these are just everyday consumers like you and I. They don't have a big following on social, but their value is based on their relatability and their trustworthy nature, since their expertise is just doing reviews. So someone like Amazon have set up their own platform called Amazon Vine. And here they invite people who do top reviews on the Amazon website and encourage them to do more reviews through offering them first access to new products or discount codes or vouchers. And again, it's just an everyday person who just does reviews, but it's something that particularly small, medium enterprises could start to have a think about how you could utilize these type of influencers. So that's a bit background of what an influencer is and the categories of influence. The next section I'm going to take you through is actually running a campaign from start to finish. So if we go to the next slide, the first thing to think about is, what is your objective? What are you trying to achieve through this partnership with an influencer? Because different influencers are good for different things. And here I'm just going to take you through 4 of the goals. Just to mention, these aren't the only 4 goals to partner with influencers, but they'll just be the ones I'm chatting through today. And the second point here is that the lists and criteria are not mutually exclusive. You could partner with an influencer who could touch upon multiple of these goals. So goal 1, if the idea is you want to raise awareness, so what's most important to you is reach. So you want mass appeal content rather than personalization, because you're trying to reach as many people as possible, as many times as possible. So when looking at influencer selection, what will be important for you will be true reach. So reach is the number of followers an influencer has. True reach is a better estimation of the number of people who actually see that piece of content. So it removes things like inactive accounts, any fake bots, and people who generally just won't see their content because of the algorithm. So that is going to be really important to look at when selecting your influencer for a brand awareness campaign. Whereas something like audience revenue, at this stage, you're not trying to convert a sale. It could not be as important. If we look at goal 2, here you want to build your brand identity. So what's going to be most important for you when looking for an influencer is if they have inspiring content. So you're looking at more their creative angle and their ability for visual storytelling. So this could be partnering with perhaps an illustrator, a graffiti artist, a photographer. So for you, it's more the content and what they can produce rather than something like the size of their audience or the revenue of their audience. Goal 3, you could be looking for lead generation. So for this, it could be that you want someone to sign up for a free trial of your service, or perhaps it's a discount code you're offering. So what you'll be looking here for an influencer is someone with a high engagement rate, because obviously if their audience are engaging, if they're commenting on their profile, they're liking their pictures, they're more likely to take that additional step to fill out a form, to enter their email address to get your discount code or free trial. So for you, engagement rate is most important. And secondly, we're still looking at audience demographic, because now here you want that additional action. That person's slightly lower down the sales funnel. So you want to make sure you're really targeting the right set of people. And the final point here is driving sales. So for this, you want soft selling content to convert fans into clients. The most important part here are going to first be demographic. Again, similar to lead gen, is the fact that you want them to be the most on target defined audience as possible, because now you're converting them into a sale. And secondly, more important will be things like audience revenue, because you want to make sure they're in the right price point. And again, something like inspiring content will not be as important for you because you're converting to sales. So moving on to the next slide is you now know your objective and you've defined slightly some of the touch points for your influencer selection. The next point you need to talk through and work out is who is your target audience and where can you find them. So this here is an example of a proposal we worked at here at Digital Business Lab for a global clothing brand. And they asked us to highlight the new free returns offer in Singapore for their clothes through influencer marketing. So what we did was we pulled together a profile of the target audience, which we named Sasha. And in green, I've highlighted the key points that we looked at to then identify an influencer. So the first key point here is that 28-year-old female. So we have to think, where can we find a 28-year-old female? And on the whole, they're going to be on Instagram and Facebook. So we need to make sure that the influencer we partner with has a strong presence here. Point two is that we know that the profile earns around $75,000 a year, which here in Singapore is just above the average income level. So it means that we need to find an influencer who is at a similar price point in that they're not offering and constantly updating pictures of Chanel purses or Hermes bracelets. So making sure it feels achievable. Point three is that she lives in Singapore. And this is really important here because this was just an offering for the Singapore market. And saying here that we're saying 40% of the influencers' audiences needs to be in Singapore. And I think a lot of people think, okay, well, if the influencer is based in Singapore, her audience must be in Singapore, or because the influencer is Singaporean, her audience must be Singaporean. That is not the case at all because of the geographical spread of influencers these days. That often when I'm using our own influencer tool is that I see that 10% are in the UK, 10% America, 10% Israel, and it's a completely mix of different locations. So when I say 40% living in Singapore, that's actually a very high and quite hard percentage to find, but important for a campaign that's very localized to Singapore. The fourth point is that we know she's fashion conscious and a fitness fanatic. So we need to make sure the influencer touches on one of these touch points. Point 5 is that our audience values experience over savings. So our audience is more interested in things like traveling and gaining memories rather than settling down, marriage and kids. So we need to make sure the influencer's at a similar life point to make it feel connected and more organic. And the final point here is looking at more of the millennial audience is that they prefer maximum convenience and lowest cost. So again, it's about making sure the influencer's lifestyle doesn't feel too far out of reach, but also because it's likely we're going to be running this returns offer free, is that we need to make sure the influencer has experience in running promotional or discounted content. So again, it feels natural and organic to their target audience. So going on to the next slide is you've now identified the type of influencer you're looking from, looking at objective and also target audience, and now you need to find them. So here are 3 different ways of doing it. The first one is literally just yourself and a laptop. So I recommend to make a list of as many keywords as possible in terms of your product or service, the industry, but also competitors, and just using any search engine to find these keywords. Even typing something in such as top 5 mummy bloggers in Singapore, there's going to be a lot of content that you can look through and see the top influencers within this market. And what you can do is if you type those influencers on Instagram and follow them, Instagram will also then give you a suggested list of other influencers you can follow, which is similar. And this is just a great way to make sure that you can find an array of different influencers and perhaps not the most popular ones. If you want to go a little bit niche, it's a great way to do it. Source 2 is what is called Facebook Brand Collabs Manager. So this is a tool for creators, which I mentioned is what Facebook terms influencers, to find business partnerships, but it's also a place for where brands and companies can go on to find influencer partnerships. So it works like any other influencer tool in that you can go on and you can search for your target audience based on things such as country, age, gender, and interests. And then it will give you a list of influencers and you can manage the whole influencer partnership on Facebook Brands Collab Manager. So all the briefing, all the negotiation, all the content approvals and the actual posting. I think a thing to mention here is that this is a relatively new platform, so there probably could be a few hiccups along the way, but also at the moment it's only open for Facebook. I think the likelihood of it will be opened up for Instagram at some point at the end of this year or start of next year, but at the moment it's a Facebook collaborations tool. And then the final way to do it, I've got a few outlines of some free tools here. I need to be completely transparent on this and say that a lot of these are very restrictive of what you can do with them. And also they tend to give you a few options of trying and finding, and then it ends your free trial. So I think perhaps the other two options would be slightly better. So the next step on the next slide is shortlist and background checks. So you now got a shortlist of all the influencers, but I really recommend to double check and cross-reference all this information. So the first thing to check against is relevancy. I think the first thing to look at is whether they like your brand or company. And if they don't know your brand or company, do they like similar competitors or similar products? And making sure that aligns with your brand vision and mission. Another thing to look at is whether they've worked with competitors, but also if they're posting a lot of hashtag sponsored ads, because I think if they're constantly partnering with different brands and companies, they're probably not the right collaboration for you. Because I think it's important to make sure that the influencer actually likes your brand or product, because it's going to make it feel a lot more authentic and organic for the audience, and you're going to get a lot better results. The example I've got here on the right is Cristiano Ronaldo did a campaign with a Japanese face sculpting products. And it didn't perform very well because there was no connection between this footballer, except for the fact he's probably relatively vain, I think we could say. But he put this product in his mouth and it floats up and down the sides. And that was all he did. He appeared in this video and then there was no other connection, and it was just, there was no like match up, and it made no sense. So I think even if a good influencer agrees to partner with you, just always double check that they feel on brand and a right fit. And the second thing is do your due diligence. Look in to make sure they have a good rapport. Things like searching their name on Google just to make sure there's nothing they've done that's controversial or could be deemed offensive. Also looking through their channels and comments to see, are they generally well liked? Is there good sentiment? Are they interacting, responding to their communities on their channels? And finally, looking at their level of engagements versus followers to make sure there's no fake followers. So once you've done this and you're happy with your final list of influencers, the next step is influencer outreach. So these are pretty self-explanatory tips that I'm giving you, but it's just more of a reminder. So the first thing is to capture their intention to increase response rate. And the second is to keep it short and sweet. I think the main thing to mention when you initially reach out to an influencer, you're not briefing them at this stage. A lot of times you may contact them directly through the platforms. So if you're doing it through Instagram, you're quite restricted with the number of word counts that you can say. So I think you just really need to get straight to the point. Tip 3 and 5 are pretty similar in that make it personal. Don't just change the name. You really need to find that common ground and make it obvious why you're reaching out to them rather than another influencer. And then tip 4 is just show how it can be a win-win partnership. Don't just talk about yourself and what you're getting from it. Make it very clear what you'll bring to the table too. So that's more my influencer outreach tips. The next section to talk about is negotiations. And I think this is something that Andrew mentioned when he handed over for me to walk you through this section, is a lot of people shy away from influencer marketing because they're worried about the amount of cost it could cost them, but also the return on investment. And I think the first thing to say here is it really is a case-by-case basis. I'm not going to say all influencers will do it without paid, because it's completely dependent on the influencer, the requirements, the scope of work, the amount of creative input, the deliverables, and also if you've got any exclusivities. But some other ways that you can do it without payment would be products. So offering them products as payment, or offering them discounts to your products if it's a very high-end product. You can also offer them exclusive access. So it could be to a VIP event, to a product launch, or even it could be access to someone within your team. Because influencers, as I mentioned, are content creators, so they want to build their brand too. So any exclusive access they could get, perhaps they run their own blog, so you could give them access to your founder, the CEO, your marketing director, whatever feels relevant. That's definitely something that you should be using as part of your negotiation. The third point here is whitelisting, which is a form of payment, but it's actually when you put advertising spend behind your collaboration posts. So what happens here is that you get granted access to the influencer's account and you can put paid spend behind it. And this is what Anish went through. And the fact is you could create lookalike audiences. So you're targeting the influencer's audience, you're creating a lookalike audience of similar profiles and also targeting them. And that's a benefit for a brand and company because obviously you're getting bigger exposure. But it's also a huge benefit to an influencer because they're always trying to build their own brand and basically expand that awareness. So for them, you're helping them get even more their content in front of even more people and essentially grow their following. So that's just another way that you can do it. Moving on to the next slide. Another way you can do it is by offering your expertise. So here at Digital Business Lab, sometimes we'll offer influencers our creative director, our head of video, as well as our videographers or our graphic designer. And the thing is here is that influencers at the end of the day, they are these content creators and they want to create the coolest piece of content. So sometimes when we say to them, look, you can have our expertise. We'll work with you to create a really cool piece of content that'll be across your channels. We'll share it across our brand and company channels. And it's a complete 100% joint collaboration. That's a really nice way you can go about it. So I think for us as an agency, that's something we can offer, but different companies can think about what are your expertise and what could you offer an influencer to help build their brand out. And I think the final one here, which I cannot not mention, is the paid partnership and cash incentive. So an example here, which is probably going to scare people now, but please don't be scared, because Kylie Jenner has around 180 million followers on Instagram, but she's rumored to charge $1.2 million a post. So this is really crazy money. And I'm assuming there must be return on investment or companies wouldn't be doing it because she does a lot of brand collaborations. But this is just to show you how crazy influencer marketing can get if you're going for the celebrity level. So moving on to the next section. So this is on briefings. So apart from including the details around the project and any mandatory requirements, so things like exact product and service details, hashtags to use, handles to mention, keywords, and any do's and don'ts, my next recommendation really is to co-create and keep that brief open, because ultimately at the end of the day, the influencer knows their audience best and they know what's going to work on their account. So my first point here is creative angle. I really recommend to share examples of similar posts that inspire you or align with your brand, because I think we've all been in situations where we brief someone verbally and what's come back is completely different to what you had in your mind, because everyone interprets creativity in a different way. So as many visual examples that you can give for the look and feel, the better I think the output will be and aligned with your brand. And the second thing here is make sure you keep it open. Really ask the influencer, do you have any creative input that can drive better results? Obviously, there are key messaging and things that you'll need to include as part of your campaign. But I think if you can keep it open, you're going to get the best results possible at the end of the day. The second thing is deliverables. Again, just be as specific as possible. If you know that you want an Instagram story, don't just ask them for an Instagram post. Specifically say, I want one Instagram story, one carousel post. But again, keep this open and say to them, you know what, from your experience on your channel, what resonates best with your audience? And let them guide you on that. The next is posting schedule. Again, if this is part of a bigger campaign, perhaps you're doing a whole marketing campaign or a PR campaign, or perhaps you're even working with perhaps 10 influencers. If you need to say, we need you to post this exactly on Thursday at 4 p.m., then that's fine. But if you have the flexibility to say to them, do you have any specific timings when your audience is online or they're more receptive or more engaging, then give them that opportunity to give you the time and date to post it, because it's, again, going to garner the best results. And the final thing here is just remember the rules and regulations here in Singapore. If you're doing a commercial relationship, they need to disclose this. So doing things like hashtag sponsored, hashtag endorse, in partnership with. Great. So now we've done all the briefing, we've activated the campaign. The next thing now is reporting and analysis. So I'm not going to run through all of these key metrics because I know we've already run quite over into your time. We want to do a Q&A, but pulling out something like brand awareness metrics. So the key things to look at here would be reach, so the number of people who saw your content, impressions, the number of times it was seen, and then frequency, the number of times an average person saw it. Because here, repetition is key. The number of times someone saw your content, it's more likely they're going to have brand retention and awareness. And then you can also start to look at things more of traffic metrics. So things like website traffic. Did you see a peak when the post went out and the following days afterwards? Did you see an increase in social mentions for your brand account? That will be really important. And just another one to pick out here is sales metrics, because I know a lot of people will partner with influencers for the conversion. So looking at new sales, again, you can give influencers tracking URLs. So this could be bit.ly links. So you can really look at your Google Analytics to see how much traffic they've driven. But you can go further than that and offer them individual promotional codes or affiliate codes. So that's offering, say, you could say a hashtag. So it could be hashtag Hattie15, which I think you'll see a lot on Instagram to get 15% off to add in your cart, add the promotional code. So that's another great way that you can track actually return on investment in terms of sales. And the final thing now, I'm just going to take you through, is a case study that we did here at Digital Business Lab in Hong Kong. So what we did here was we partnered with an influencer called RGM Star, who's a fashion consultant, as well as Raffles Fashion Art School, University in Hong Kong, and Lab Concept, who is part of the Lane Crawford, so one of the biggest departmental stores in Hong Kong. And for this influencer had around 45,000 following. It wasn't a paid sponsorship. What we offered was this $350 shop voucher. But the big thing here and the main selling was about elevating her fashion career and her overarching brand awareness and having her lead this campaign and highlight her basically as the profile as her fashion consultant. Because for her, it was more about the fact she was collaborating with one of the best fashion schools in Hong Kong and one of the biggest department stores in Hong Kong. So what we did was everything was led by RGM Style. So she ran a workshop in the morning with students from the university where she spoke them through her experience and her recommendations on fashion. She then took them down to Lane Crawford and to the Lab Concept section where she helped them style themselves. She was then part of the campaign launch video, which was actually a competition. You can see at this image at the bottom here. So all the students had to create their own outfit and look and feel and upload this across their social channels, as well as this was supported by the university, Lab Concept and the influencer, and get as many people as possible to like their photo to be in the chance to win the whole competition and also get shopping vouchers. So I just wanted to use this case study to show that it's not all about paid. And this influencer for this campaign actually did a lot. So she did the workshop, taking them down to Lab Concept, the launch video. She also supported all this with posting across Facebook and Instagram, which we received over 160,000 engagements. And that was all organic. So it was a really successful campaign for us. And all that in the end costed was the $350. So it's just about looking at influencers and finding what that sweet spot is, and whether it is about building their profile, it could be that their profile is at a good place and it's more paid. And that's basically how I'm going to finish today, is on that campaign. So that's it for me on influencer. I think similarly, if you have any questions or any other information you want from me on anything to do with the full social media marketing mix, please do also reach out to me on LinkedIn. I haven't got a slide with my LinkedIn on, but it's Hattie Trounce, working at Digital Business Lab. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much indeed, Hattie. That was great. So let's quickly, without any further ado, move on to Q&A. So let's bring the panel in. We have a bunch of questions. So if everybody's okay with this, we're going to run over. We're just going to go for it. So I have a lovely long list of questions here. But I think the best thing for me to do is to kind of start at the top and work our way down. So I'm just wondering if we could perhaps just quickly pull Elizabeth in to answer a question about LinkedIn, which has come in from an anonymous attendee.
Okay.
Now, the question is it better to have a business LinkedIn page, stick to a personal page only, or both?
That's a great question. I get asked that one a lot. So I would recommend having both. So have both a business page and a personal profile. The business page is a little bit more restricted in terms of content marketing. It's more of a kind of broadcast platform. But the benefits of a business page is it does help you rank in the Google search engine results page. So definitely have one. But as I mentioned in my section, I think people want to connect with other people on LinkedIn. It's still a social media platform. So personally, I would recommend doing the majority of your marketing from your personal profile. So I do all of my blogs and videos and announcements and stuff from my personal profile. I do sometimes update my business page as well. So I do them in tandem, but I probably put 75% effort into my personal profile, 25% into my business page.
Great, thank you very much indeed. So we have a question here from Helen. In the UK, you're now required to highlight if you're getting paid to use and promote a product. Do those rules apply here in Singapore? I think probably it would be good to ask that question to Hattie.
Yeah, they do. I think the UK is a lot more strict on that you have to really make it transparent if it's a paid collaboration. And these rules stand here in Singapore too. I think they are slightly more relaxed on it. But I really would recommend that you always do things like hashtag sponsored ad, hashtag SP, or in partnership, because it's not worth the advertising agency here basically finding you or pulling down a collaboration you've worked long on. So you really need to be as transparent as possible. So that counts for product reviews. Even if you're not paying an influencer, it's still a collaboration. If you're incentivizing it in any way, that should be made aware to the public and their audience. So definitely, I would put hashtag SP.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's really, really clear. We've got a question from Doug Trin. Now, he asks how to maximize the paid media on LinkedIn, i.e. inviting the suitable audience to a webinar. Okay. Anish, would you like to answer that?
Sure. So there's actually a few ways you can do this. You can run promoted ads, so you can have all the information about your webinar that's coming up and click the little promotion tool. So it's essentially like a small little graph with a pointing up arrow, and you can promote that. Another way you can do it is that LinkedIn have recently launched this events tab. And what you can do there is you can create an event on LinkedIn and then promote that entire event and have sort of like a page only for your event, right? And you have all the information there. You can interact with all the attendees, and you can see who's attending, who's not attending, etc. So that would be my most recommended way, would be to create this event page and then promote the event page itself.
Fantastic. It's great. Like, you guys like immediately have answers for all this stuff. It's brilliant. Okay, got one for Liz here. Cheng B from Terrific Mentors here. I'd really like to link or measure the success of our LinkedIn and Facebook posts and if they're driving traffic to our website. We use Google Analytics at the moment. Can you share some tips as to how we can maximize our visibility and drive leads using our blogs and content?
Okay. So first of all, I think Google Analytics, I love Google Analytics. It's a great way to measure your traffic going from social to your website. So that's absolutely the right thing to do. In terms of maximizing your traffic, it depends on the platform. So if we start with LinkedIn, so what's working really well on LinkedIn at the moment in terms of content that's driving traffic and conversion are articles and longer form content. So I think this has been one of the kind of impacts of COVID, is that people are spending longer online. So the longer form content is working better. And in fact, the word count that people are willing to kind of go through is growing month on month. So long form content on LinkedIn works really well. If we're looking at Facebook, then as I highlighted in my presentation, video is absolutely the way to go. Video is being pushed in terms of Facebook's own algorithm. So more people will see video, because the challenge we have with Facebook is their organic reach, which is very, very low. So you want to get your content out in front of people so they can see it and then obviously link through to your website. So video is working well. And actually video over 3 minutes is working particularly well at the moment. Same reason, more people are online, spending longer looking at content. And then Instagram, it's stories. Obviously, you need to have over 10,000 followers in order to swipe up and then click on the link to go from Instagram over to a corporate website. And personally, from experience, that's the most difficult one, because people tend to want to go to Instagram and stay there. So you do need to either do it from stories or do it from your bio. That's the only way really to drive traffic there.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Liz. Have another question for Anish from Mark Stewart at Anagram Group. Anish, which type of Facebook ad, carousel, image, video, GIF, have you seen works well for getting leads in B2B business?
In one.
Can we start you again, because we just lost your audio at the beginning there. Do you mind?
Oh, sure, sorry. Yeah, so for leads, it would be the lead generation format, which I mentioned. So what you can do is you can have a set of pre-filled questions. So when a user will click on your sign-up page, the information will already be captured based on what the information they've provided to Facebook. So email, name. But I do understand that some people will use their personal email addresses and not their work email addresses or their beats or the ones that you want to reach out to. So if it's the right lead and they targeted rightly using the various targeting methods, then they'll add in their personal email. But I could also recommend doing lead generation ads on LinkedIn. So this is something that I would like to also mention is like all of the formats that I took you through when we were going through, which I mentioned more on Facebook, they're also available on LinkedIn. So you can do things like traffic ads, you can do lead generation ads also on LinkedIn. So if you're doing more of a B2B campaign, I would recommend doing it on LinkedIn. Although it can be at times, depending on what industry you're in, more expensive to advertise on LinkedIn. But if you're looking for lead generation, then for a B2B product or B2B service, I would recommend LinkedIn.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. And let's just have a final question with, we've got Vanessa Errington, who's a member of the Marketing and Communications Committee, and she's asking about a question for Hattie about influencers. So she's really interested in what you were talking about, and she's asking that they're often asked to trade care with various influencers, and I always find it difficult to put an ROI on this. There's that wonderful word ROI. Now I definitely have some key points to ask them. Thanks very much. I think it's more of a comment than it is actually a question. But I'm just wondering if you can give us a sense of ROI within the context that Vanessa's talking about.
Yeah, I think it's completely dependent on what your objective is. And I think that's where I've gone through. Once you know what it is, if it's a brand awareness campaign, you have to think about what is important for you. So it'd be more about the reach metrics and the frequency, and then more of the traffic. And I think ROI can be quite hard to measure for influencer marketing unless you're giving these direct so promotional code links or bit.ly tracking links. But I think at the end of the day, you need to work out where you were at before the influencer campaign, where you want to get to, and then where the difference is. So if there's been a mass increase in traffic and you're doing a brand awareness campaign, obviously that's good for you. But if it sells and you've seen that there's a particular peak on the day the influencer went through, then again, that's a very good term for return on investment. And Andrew, you said with the first point was around the key thing was tread with care.
Yeah, let me just pull it up again. Hold on a sec. They're often asked to trade care with various influencers, and I always find it difficult to put an ROI on this. Now I definitely have some key points. Is there anything else in that?
I think that's pretty much it. And I think the whole point of influencer and when you're working with them and negotiating with them is you do need to be extremely careful, because recently at the moment on Instagram, there's a viral account that's called the Influencer Pay Gap. And they're asking influencers to write what companies they've been reached out for, what the deliverables were, and how much they were paid. And there's complete variations of people saying, I got product placements, I got paid this. And it kind of is, influencer marketing is still the wild, wild west of social media, because there is no streamline, like you pay a micro influencer this, you pay a macro influencer this, celebrity this. I would just recommend to whatever the influencer asks for is go from there and work out what you're happy to spend and what your return on investment would be. So if you know a sale for if you're selling, I don't know, a hairdryer, and the sale of a hairdryer is $50, it's working from that, how much you'd be willing to pay them, looking at your average sales and the average amount of products someone would add to their basket, and do it kind of in reverse. Some people do 1% per 10,000 followers. So 10,000 followers would be around $100 investment as their very base level. And then from that, they'll build up depending on how many deliverables, whether there's any exclusivities, they can't work with other brands. So that's more my recommendation. I've kind of gone away from the looking at return on investment. But
I think that's really interesting. I mean, I think one thing which I really got from your presentation that I found really interesting is, and also we've experienced it as a company as well in terms of working on campaigns here and there where we have to make video with influencers, is this sort of this need from the influencer community, if you like, for credibility and building their own brands. And the fact that as soon as you start doing things in different contexts with them, rather than having them create their own content with their phone in promoting products, you bring them into the context of maybe making some kind of brand video with them or putting them on television. There seems to be this allure for influencers to actually be on television. It's seen as this kind of like really high level sort of production type thing for them to be on, basically.
Definitely.
But I've just got one final question. I think that it would be quite good for everybody, which is from Vanessa, and maybe we'll just, as the final question for all of us today, is the issue of fake followers and fake audiences. So, from all three of you, let's start off with Anish, perhaps. What is your best way to sort of identify whether followers are fake or the audience is paid for? Whether it's a click farm in Bangladesh or something like that.
It's quite easy to see that, actually, because you look at the person's page and you look at their engagement rate compared to the followers. So there's normally a formula that you would follow, and it's essentially you look at how many likes that they get per post and how many followers that they have. So if they've got like more than like 5,000, 10,000 followers and they get an average of 30 to 40 likes on their posts, then you know that they bought most of their followers, because it's just a bot account that's bought them and that's dead now, and that they don't actively engage with their audiences. So that's one way that I would often look for fake followers and fake accounts.
Interesting.
If an influencer has those.
What about you, Liz?
Well, from my point of view, if I'm looking at followers on my client's accounts or on my account, I think, as Anish said, it's all about engagement. So really, Instagram certainly isn't about followers. It's about how many people comment, like, and share. It's about connection, not counting up followers. So people who engage and ask questions and like and share things are genuine. If there's a whole bunch of people who never look at anything, and I think Anish mentioned, videos as well when you're doing paid ads, and it's equally as important for organic content. If people are looking at your videos and viewing it, that's often a really good sign of engagement, and that shows a genuine follower as opposed to someone who's a fake follower.
That's great. And Hattie?
Yeah, I think just to add to what everyone said, I think we've all seen it when you look for unnatural comments. So things which are just like thumbs up or nice photo. These tend to be quite robotic comments that usually you can tell they've paid for those engagements. And also looking at those users' names, if they have weird characters, and clicking through, because a lot of them will either have one follower or zero and they won't have posted anything. So you're going to see pretty quickly these are fake accounts following them. I think another thing to do is just to look back in their profile, because if they've bought fake followers or fake engagements, there's going to be a peak at some point. So if you go back and suddenly see that they were getting 100 likes for photos and the next day they're on thousands and thousands, you're going to have a pretty accurate answer there that they're fake followers. And it's the final way you can actually do it is if you look at these suspicious accounts that you're seeing liking and commenting quite a lot, I'd look to see where they're geotagging in their location. Because again, if you're seeing quite a random location and the influencer, it doesn't make sense they would match to that. And I think, again, that's going to be a flag of fake followers have been bought. And I think in Singapore, it was quite a common theme that I have seen. I think just when influencer marketing took off, there was quite a lot of people who went about and bought followers as they saw it expanding in places like China, also the UK, America. So I think it's something that I always have in the back of my mind to check, and that's using that metric called true reach, which some influencer tools have. The one we have with it, Digital Business Lab, will tell us if they've got fake bots, basically. So I have to use that every single time to see what their true reach is. And if that isn't close or matching to their reach, then I wouldn't work with them at all.
Great. Very useful. Thank you very much. And that now brings us to the end of the event, everybody. And I think that we're only really left to take you through a little bit of housekeeping, but most importantly, to thank our panelists. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Big virtual clap from everybody. If you would like to get in touch, the best way to do so is to get in touch with Sabina at BritCham. Her email is there, and she can get you in touch with Anish, Hattie, or Liz, and that's the best way to get through if you haven't already obviously taken down their details from their presentations. The webinar will be available on demand. I'm not too sure how long it is, but normally it's a week or so after the event. It's put up on the BritCham site. And then all that is left for me to do is to take you through obviously, we've done the webinar in a slightly different way today, using tech from our company, from AsiaWorks. We're actually broadcasting live from our studio here in Singapore. And we're using a system called the Virtual Production Studio, which is a way for clients of ours to basically show their webinars in a slightly different, more visually attractive way. Maybe if we can just click onto the slide to give a little explanation of what it does. We're using it as a means to try and create more visually interesting webinars, corporate communications, workshop and training, online meetings, digital and virtual events. It's applicable to lots of different types of live interactive content, which a lot of people are doing these days. Maybe if you just pop to the next slide. Basically, what it allows us to do is to give you customizable screens and layouts, as you've seen today. We can stream content at up to 1080 high definition. It's fully compatible with a range of different services, so your audience can join via what you normally use: Zoom, BlueJeans, Skype, WebEx, Teams, as well as we can broadcast to streaming platforms like Facebook and Instagram and other VC platforms. And we have the opportunity, obviously, to brand events in a more visually attractive ways, putting your logos up on screen and sharing videos, and as well as just sort of PowerPoint presentations. But what's behind all of this is a production team, a professional video production team, who know what they're doing in the world of interactive live video, which I think for a lot of people who are conducting live events at the moment is sometimes needed. That's what we can offer to try and help your live events at AsiaWorks. So if you'd like to get in touch, then please get in touch through the chamber, and we'd be happy to see if we can help. And the next order of business before we wrap up is to let you guys know about events that are coming up. So we have a few webinars which we'd like to let you know about. The first is a interactive ascent of Mount Everest with Grant Axe Rawlinson, who's an extremely interesting chap. That's happening on the 4th of August and has lots of people who have signed up for it already. So I'd encourage you to sign up for that. We've got a Leadership in Asia, Navigating Global Markets on the 13th of August, and Everything You Need to Know from BritCham on the 27th of August. And one more thing that we'd like to let you know about, and we're going to play a video for that. Yes, it's the British Business Awards, the annual Business Awards, which are taking place in a special virtual award ceremony on the 29th of October, and they are open for entry, and it's open to anybody to enter. So it's free to enter, open to any company that wishes to enter. You don't have to be a member of BritCham. So please do tell your friends. 10 exciting award categories. And as I mentioned, on the 29th of October, we'll be doing the awards in a special online announced live ceremony, which should be an awful lot of fun for everybody who takes part. So please, we'd encourage you to enter, take a look and enter. All the details are on the BritCham website. Now, after the event, everybody's going to be receiving an event feedback email, and that's going to land in your inboxes. So please, could you fill them in? We're always really, really keen to hear your feedback. And finally, a really big thank you to the team at BritCham for helping us put this event on, especially to Sabina, all of the wonderful people at BritCham. We're very grateful, and that's it from us. And we hope to see you at upcoming events at the Chamber. Thank you very much indeed.